first Legacy Sustainability Subcommittee came together. It's good to see Nancy's in the room. I think you're the only other member of that committee that was here in those earliest days. What we wanted to do was really think big. We did really want to think big in those early stages. What does sustainability mean for us? So I did use a pretty structured framework to get some sustainability ideas on the table, think in a whole range of categories about what it could mean for us in the community. Had a great range of stakeholders from the college to the city to Stantec to Nova and to other community members, and just kind of pounded this thing out. That really allowed us to think big. If you don't think big early, you have no opportunity to go after those big endeavors. And I think as as even we got to the end, we probably realized that if we'd even started early, perhaps that was going to be helpful. But you have no chance if you don't start early. And then from my perspective, even before Taylor came on board, as the organization was kind of simmering into existence, it was slowly building. We had some great opportunities to engage the staff, even as they were just kind of involved in office activities, to think about what does sustainability mean in our office place, in our office space, when we think about particularly those environmental categories. And I had certainly an opportunity to bring in the perspective from the employer I was with at the time to say, as we're looking at what waste collection and recycling was already possible in the office, getting some of the education out that plastic actually is typically the best material in terms of having an inherently lower environmental footprint. It doesn't look so good when you're not recycling at the back end. And those are clearly challenges in the plastics industry at large, but having the staff think about that big picture, cradle to grave, cradle to cradle type concepts around materials and try and get those practices built in early. And I found that very helpful. Taylor can probably bridge that into how that continued to go.
Yeah, and I just want to mention too, it was important to me that we educated staff and got them engaged, because how could you expect spectators and athletes to be enthusiastic about sustainability if the whole society itself wasn't? So that was important. And one of the first projects I had was implementing diversion stations at the office and slowly taking away people's garbage cans. And their behavior at first and to the end of the games was interesting to change. At first they were like, no, I don't want to do this. Why are you doing this? Why are you taking away my garbage can? And then as time went on, people all of a sudden started tattletaling on each other. And I was getting text messages on the weekend about whether something could be recycled or not. So the progression was interesting between the staff. And that kind of leads us into soft plastic collection too. We had the staff during games time, if they got merchandise, before games time, they got merchandise, they would come to my office. I had a little soft plastic collection and we would end up recycling it. But games time, we definitely underestimated the amount of soft plastic that was produced, especially by the pins. It was an insane amount, and then also volunteer stacks as well had soft plastic. So we definitely learned that we produce a lot more soft plastic during games time than we do beforehand, and that maybe we should have set up some soft plastic collection during games time as well.
Good point, because much of soft plastic is recyclable. You just have to think about it. Can I collect it? Do I have an outlet for it once I collect it? And those kind of things, sometimes you trip into late. As good as your planning can be, you still get caught sometimes later on. But I think Taylor's right on the money with behaviors and staff and how that reflects on the rest of the organization. We all know that the biggest environmental side of sustainability challenges globally is behavioral. I'll just leave it hanging. Great conversation, please.
And then I want to talk about the green team. So that was a project that we implemented this game, where we had a local organization come in. They would collect the cans and bottles at the festival site, and then the money generated from recycling those would go towards the organization. So it's kind of like a fundraising program for them. And near the end of the 2 weeks, I was watching a concert, and I could hear people behind me saying oh, I need to look for the people with the green pennies to recycle my cans, or someone would ask them where it goes. Oh, just look for the people with the green pennies. So that was interesting how near the end of the games, all of a sudden people knew they had to recycle their cans because they saw this green team and people in the green pennies. So it was always at the back of their mind. And then leading into waste management education, it is key, and I think a lot of people know that. And I think for us, we just kind of missed a certain group of people. We educated staff so well. By games time, they knew exactly what to do, and we educated athletes as well. But then I feel like we did miss volunteers a bit. I got a lot of questions during games time from volunteers, where does this go? I don't know where this goes. Or volunteers putting things in the wrong bin. So I think we just missed that group of people.
Yeah, and there's lots of little things you'll see at Games Time. Again, even with the best plans, green teams became important because I can think of even the one VIP, the back VIP section in the plaza, inside the dome. There was a time when the garbage bin and the recycle bin were 20 feet apart. And unfortunately, what that means is people walk up the garbage bin first. They can't always even see the other bin, and so everything gets up. And again, it's a behavioral challenge, but how do we make it easier for people? We've got to think about all those little details ahead. So successes, early. It gets those stakeholders engaged. It allows you to keep them engaged from a community perspective through the events. I think a lot of our committee, several of the members were so keenly engaged right from start to finish, really grabbing onto some projects and helping them forward.
And then again about the staff, they were educated early, so by Games Time they're enthusiastic about it. It actually got to a point too where we started adding sustainability initiatives that weren't originally on the plan because coordinators and managers were thinking about sustainability with almost every project they implemented. So for example, our spectator experience coordinator, for the metal trays, she ended up having them sourced locally and they were recycled by wooden pallets. And that wasn't on our original plan, and she was so enthusiastic about it, and she just went ahead and did it, which was awesome. So we added that. And then the Mitts for Many program, so the Mitts for Many program is when we collected mitts during Games Time, and they were donated to the Mustard Seed. Don't know what the Mustard Seed is. They're an organization here in all of Alberta, and they help those experiencing poverty. So this program blew up beyond what I ever thought it would be. We actually ended up collecting 3,000 mitts over the course of 2 weeks that were donated to the Mustard Seed. And we were the first host society to implement a program like this. Usually in previous games, the teams themselves will create a project like this within their province. So Team Ontario will collect tubes, for example. Where we were the first games where we actually brought all the teams together into one project to donate to one organization. And then we integrated sustainability into all functional planning early on. So all early planning documents had a sustainability portion to them that the department or functional area needed to achieve. And we were also the first games to do this as well. And overall, we had 89 sustainability projects. I think we originally started with 70 something. And because coordinators and managers added more on that weren't on the original plans, we ended up with 89, and we actually ended up achieving over 90% of them by the end of Games Time.
Okay, I'll get into that first challenge. You're thinking about initially legacy, but also sustainability more broadly in executing games. Where do you want to start? Well, you want to go back to previous games, and we've certainly heard that the previous games have done some great things in terms of sustainability. But when you actually kind of dig in and read the reports, the most we could glean was, gee, we wish we had started earlier. We just started our sustainability focus a year in advance. We couldn't really do as much as we wanted because we didn't have enough time. But there's a bunch of stuff they did, and they really just kind of briefly talked about it. So it really wasn't kind of a backbone to grab onto in terms of how they actually tactically executed development of the sustainability plan. So that was certainly a bit of a challenge from my perspective. I'd already had some experience in my company for implementing and driving our own sustainability program, so I could bring some tools and processes and systems in. But it really, the one thing that resonated with me was the early piece. And that, again, kudos to the board. Again, I can't say this enough time. Starting more than 3 years in advance, thinking about sustainability is absolutely critical. They started earlier than any other organization in the past, I think, from a sustainability focus perspective.
And we had very little information from previous games to work on, so we kind of had to reinvent the wheel. So that was a challenge, but I think we overcame it and did pretty well. And from our games, we ended up doing a final report, so that way next games, they don't experience the same thing. They have all the information that we did, all the challenges and successes we faced. Waste management was a challenge because not only because of the education piece, but it was very inconsistent for each venue. One venue would have one recycling rule, the next one would have a different one. So it wasn't consistent. And also, the City of Red Deer just implemented their composting program to residents not long before, so it hadn't really gone out to venues yet. So we also faced that challenge as well. So it just wasn't the same across the board. And And this kind of ties in with sustainability consistency as well. Each functional area had sustainability goals they needed to achieve, but some achieved it with almost every project, or they even did more than they were expected, where others, it was a bit of a challenge or not so much. And we tried to overcome this by having regular check-ins with them and consulting them with their sustainability initiatives and seeing where we could support. But there's just some projects, I think too, we discovered this a little too late at that point, so there's some projects that just didn't have any sustainability initiatives achieved. And then my last point here, a lot of times when we start a project, I reach out to someone and the ideas were always massive. Like, we're going to change the world, this is going to be the best thing ever. And I have to admit, like, I was guilty of it too starting. But then once you start factoring in budget, the amount of people, time, all of a sudden that idea starts getting smaller. And you have to come up with ways to make it more realistic and achievable. So for example, we did a bike, an energy producing bike called the Pedal for Power program. We had these awesome ideas for it, that the screen was going to be like a game or a race and people, it'd be interactive. And once we actually sat down and went through it, it was like 600 hours of work and like super expensive. And so we had to bring that down to a more achievable level.
Yeah, and that theme, as Scott knows, really goes back even to the legacy communities. The initial committee was dreaming big. That list we generated was quite massive, and we tried to highlight the things we thought were most important as a committee. But of course, you want to think about changing the world if you have the opportunity. I guess we could have challenged the end to double the sponsorship, even beyond what the NSC achieved. But you have to have the ability to kind of make that happen. I think it's important to see where you need to go as a community and want to go, and then find a way that fits discreetly within the mission of the Games, really to deliver the value the Games is there to do, and hopefully with the right partnerships along the way, we bring the community along, they bring us along. Anyway, that theme was always in our minds, but we definitely had to scale those big things back to see what fits, and that really came right down to operational plans.
So
we
didn't have any sustainability volunteers, but a lot of the stuff were achieved by the staff themselves. So one of the main roles, like I talked about, is that the staff were to implement sustainability initiatives where possible. We weren't expecting them to do it every time because that was just unrealistic, but where they felt like they could do it, they could make it sustainable. So I've mentioned the metal tray example. Also, our VIP gifts were sustainable as well. Our VIP coordinator had them sourced by Central Middle School, where the students made all the easels for them. And they're like little wooden easels, and all the students made it to hold a little tile made by Voyager Art and Tile. So that was an initiative that wasn't on the original plan, but the coordinator thought of it at the back of her head. She was like, I want to make this sustainable, and she got it done.
Yeah, and for context, the reason the questions are on staff and volunteers and what's that balance look like and how would we see that working, the reason it was different for us is that sustainability was not a separate functional area. You didn't have a bunch of accountabilities and responsibilities that kick in at Games time where they're executing. It was really our job to umbrella all the other committees and say, here's some things you can and should do. And then we just kind of, unfortunately, step back and have nothing to do with Games time. That's a little bit, say that a little tongue in cheek, because there were certainly some challenges to chase along the way, and Taylor and I talked a few times about those things. There's ways I could engage and help during the Games in small ways, but we really didn't have that. And now, thinking in the future, I would say maybe that is an opportunity here as well to say, is there a way to maybe think of your sustainability challenges that you might run into? Think about it as sustainability risk management in advance, and just even assign some committee members and others to steward those in Games execution time. But that's just some thoughts bouncing through my head right now.
That picture's from the Fermenting program, and way more people showed up than we thought would at the press conference, so this just shows a fraction of it.
Taylor and I were just stealing the spotlight here. So, doing it again. We said early, very important. I would probably implement Taylor's role even earlier. So when I think about the amount of work that's expanded into it, that number of initiatives, not all of those are monster initiatives, of course, at 89 things, but they're various sizes, they all take energy, and they all take a little bit of stewarding along the way. So 16 months may not have been sufficient. I would have said if you could do something else big in this community or big in future Games, think about putting that role in place even earlier as well. Assuming the funding's there in time.
And then for the sustainability committee, I would have engaged some of the members differently. A lot of our members had other roles during games time, so they were very involved. Where others, the sustainability committee was their only involvement. And I wish earlier we would have maybe implemented roles during games time for them, as pretty much once games started, then it felt like their role with sustainability was done, right? So I wish we did that earlier and maybe defined where they would be involved during games time. And then last, the festival site, we did our best with the festival site. It was a massive thing, and we did implement sustainability initiatives for it. If we were to do it again, there's a lot more you could do to make it more sustainable. And I think on my part, I definitely underestimated just how big the festival is and just how popular it is. But there's just a lot of things we didn't account for, like for example, the diesel generators that ran pretty much for the entire duration of the 2 weeks. These are things we didn't really think of or try to come up with a different sustainable solution for it. So.
And I'll make one more parting comment before we open it up for questions if there are any. As the representative of the Pillar Sustainability sponsorship with Nova Chemicals, I will say I saw lots of great success numbers in terms of how did athletes feel and volunteers and spectators, but I didn't see any stats up there about the sponsorships, and I will say we were beyond delighted with our sponsorship and the support we got from the organization and the ability to make a difference in such an important area and get involved. And as you know, we had lots of young people involved through the games. So I would say if you haven't got a read on that yet, from my perspective, it was probably the most amazing sponsorship experience we had with this huge organization that I've seen. I thought I'll part with that comment. And open it up for questions. By the way, Taylor and I could add another slide if you want with our contact information. Just kind of talked about that before. There's again lots of detail under the surface, and I think we're both willing to be contacted with these questions afterwards.
Our teams keep contacting me with questions. So.
Thank you, Rick and Taylor, for your presentation. And as someone who was there for a lot of the ride, it was a very good overview. I think you've undersold some of the work you did. The tree planting to mitigate climate change was very successful in the community, and there's a lot of interest in that, and that has a long-term legacy. So it would have been great to away, but to point it out, I think also the sustainable purchasing guide that George started and we kind of made for our community was a very good legacy. So for other people planning events, I think those are important elements to promote. And then I think the one piece that I would add in terms of if we were doing it differently, I think we could have leveraged our muscle a little bit. There was a lot of fear, and what was frustrating for me being on the committee, there was fear of, well, we don't want to push people, we don't want to push the sustainability message, this is a sports event. So, but one of our goals was sustainability, and so we didn't go in and say to those venues, hey, could you do better at your recycling, or hey, could you do better at this? And the one we did with the city, because it's in there, I mean, they did water audits to reduce their water use and really made long-term improvements now that they've continued with their facilities. They implemented a waste diversion efforts and stations that they wouldn't have maybe put in at that time if it wasn't more the timing with the games. And that was just a little bit of, hey, this is coming, and we, how can you do better than you're doing now? And I think you could do that with other venues. We didn't maybe use that muscle, or for some reason we didn't want to get into the spaces or whatever, but I think we could have done that more, because where we did at college was another success. They were very sustainable because they wanted to put the best business.
Yeah.
That would be my advice to others.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. I'm going to try and encapsulate those comments quickly on the mic just so they're captured. Definitely, we didn't even attempt to try and capture all of the 89 initiatives, but I agree with you. A couple of the key ones that were very visible and I think important was the tree planting initiative as one. And of course, that sustainable purchasing guide that came in fairly early in the process and already has been leveraged beyond the games. I think that's another really good one. I do also want to reiterate the point that yes, it is something I've also thought about, that you could perhaps leverage the community differently, leverage the muscle, I think, as you worded it. And really the waste management piece is the interesting one. And you were talking about, could we have audited facilities, and is there something else we could have done? Even just thinking about stepping back out of the games back into my role within NOVA, I discovered how difficult it can be sometimes to get a waste management program realigned. Again, you think about 14 venues, multiple cities, multiple counties. Not all of them are at the same place in time in terms of where their local programs are at. It wasn't even until I got a little bit confused as to why Nova's own executive place collection program wasn't as up to snuff as it should be. And then you realize, you know what, the city's doing a great job of advancing municipal collection, and it's great to programming, but that hasn't kind of hit at the commercial level yet in the city. And you start finding out that everybody's got their different contracts in place. And some of those contracts might be in place for some length of time, and they all are going to different locations with different providers and at different costs. And so forcing that stuff through a funnel into a single output is actually more difficult, I think, than we would have anticipated until we're kind of into it. But I agree, we probably could have considered leveraging that more together. It's only now that Nova's getting, we had to muscle a little bit in Lacombe County to get a different set of collection at our Joffrey site, and muscle a little bit with our, it wasn't really muscle, Stantec and Nova are collaborating a lot and getting their program at executive place lined up in a better way, but it takes a long time. It can be painful. So I'd encourage you to think about in your other events, if we do anything else in this region that's multi-location, multi-stakeholder, again, whether it's municipal, provincial, federal governments that need to come and help. What programs can you align early and get that muscle applied in a way that makes it look like a single feel from a games type event? It's pretty tough question, actually. But thanks, Nancy. That's very good points.
Just quick too, and no, I just want to mention too, after 6 months after the games have ended, I myself am still feeling the legacy that sustainability has left on Red Deer. Just even myself, at my new workplace too, just people even knowing that I was the sustainability coordinator for the games, all of a sudden my new coworkers being like, oh sorry, this isn't sustainable. It's like, they know, and it's in the back of their mind, just me even being present there. I'm getting a lot too from the Arctic 2020 games, messaging me, wondering what did we do as the 2019 games? Can I provide them more information? Can I answer questions? So it definitely feel 6 months later, I'm still feeling like we had an impact, not only just on Red Deer, but in other parts of Canada and games as well. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just a comment at the back that how vocal Taylor was about sustainability needs, and definitely she was a powerhouse. So kudos from me to Taylor for carrying the wild thoughts of the community into real action. So thank you.
So Rick and Taylor, on behalf of the board, thank you very much. Just a couple of perspectives from the board. The rearview mirror is always 2020, but I think the biggest thing for 2019 is that we got the party started when it comes to sustainability. The conversation has started, the framework is there, and it's only going to get bigger and better as other games go on. And also, it just shows you that the board can have that 30,000-foot comment of, we want this to be the most sustainable games ever, and then you hand it off to some very, very capable people, and this is what comes out of it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Deb.
Actually, Deb's company, Parkland Nurseries, Landscaping, sorry, there's always that nuance. They were the sponsor of our sustainable legacy project there, where we planted 2019 trees throughout central Alberta as part of that. And it was a really cool project, and they came to the table and really made that possible. So thanks, Deb. And the Dwayne. Okay.
Sit up.